This is
Good. Ready to go.
Is he?
What happened?
Greg's on his boat again. This is amazing. How are you?
How are you?
Good.
The
Good,
tide
thank
is
you.
still. No tide.
We're good?
Yes, we're good. We're on mute, so whenever you want to start.
Thank you, everyone. Hello. Here's my gavel. I'll call to order the April 8th Killam School Building Committee meeting. And we will take a roll call vote. This looks like we have Greg online. So Karen,
Here.
John,
Yeah.
Kirk is not here. Sarah, doesn't look like she's here. Ed, doesn't look like he's here. Greg,
Here.
doesn't look like Pat is here, and Nancy.
Yes, here.
And Carla's here. Great. Okay, I'll quickly review. We're going the agenda and then we'll move along. We'll have public comment if there is anybody from the public here. We'll have liaison reports. We are going to talk about MBTA communities and how it may relate to the MSBA funding discussion. We're going to talk a little bit about pre-K. We'll go into the designer reports and then OPA, hey Pat, OPM updates as well. We'll vote on potentially on invoices, talk about school tours. We'll have a meeting minutes approval, and we'll talk about future items on the agenda. So any public comment? Anybody? And Jackie, we don't have anybody else online?
No, no one from the public.
Thank you. Okay. And we'll go to liaison reports. Jane's not here?
No, she's up today. So
Okay.
Okay, I had something, but,
Go
they
ahead,
just like left. No, it's like,
forgot. Yep.
sorry.
Let us know if it comes back. Anybody else have a liaison report? We just wanted to quickly talk about, we meet monthly for communications meeting, and the meetings are really robust. We get a lot done. There's a lot of communications that come out. Our website is constantly being updated. It's a really good and very productive meeting. And we use every system that we can, every avenue of communication in the town, which is awesome. We're hearing like just really positive things about people feeling like they know about what's going on with the project. So kudos to Jane and that whole group. Okay, moving right along. I wanted to talk about, just let the committee know, we've been having some discussions in our XLT meetings about, as you know, about the MBTA communities and what that means for our town. And if we are not in compliance in our town, what that potentially could mean to funding sources. So Mike and Collier's, Susanna, went to, we asked them to speak with the MSBA about it, to say, you know, Reading is not moving in the direction where we are looking to be not in compliance with MBTA communities. But if that were to happen, would that have any impact on MSBA funding? And the answer we got back from the MSBA was, no, it shouldn't. We're two separate entities. Then Matt, maybe you can report, you went to our delegation.
Yeah, so I talked to the delegation about it. They said, you know, they couldn't say 100% either, but they said it was a risk because the lawsuit that was filed against Milton was pretty broad, and that's not going to be decided until probably October. So, I mean, it's probably unlikely, but they can't say 100% that it won't. They can't say that it will. It's a little too early, but it's something to watch, I think. So that's my report back.
Right.
Yeah.
Something that we want on our radar. We don't know what it means, but I feel like the process we're in is really different from, grants that the town may receive in other ways. Just because I feel like we have commitments from the MSBA, but,
Yeah.
it's still, it's still money coming from outside of the town, so.
Right, so something to watch. I mean, they could, the AG's office could decide that they're gonna go in and write the zoning for you, and that could be the remedy, but you would keep the money, you know, it's so broad, it's just hard to know at this point, you know, so.
It's on our radar.
Yeah.
Just so.
Yeah, I'm watching it
Is the
too.
money we are spending in the design phase, is that also at risk? Just construction?
Great question.
It hasn't been
Right.
spent already, I mean, I don't think they're gonna call it
Well,
back,
it can,
but-
it can go back, yes, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So it is something we should keep our eye on.
Absolutely.
Right.
That $2.2 million that,
Right,
you know, we're told is part of the reimbursement if the project moves forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter to me, but mine, you're in trouble.
so we hope to comply though, I mean, you know,
Right,
we're still
exactly.
working on things. It's heading towards November town meeting now, we've gotten a lot of great public input, so we're hoping to comply in some way, shape or form. I can't tell you what that is yet, you know, we're still deciding, but, so, you know, we can't say 100% because it's up to town meeting, but we're gonna give it our best, because we don't wanna lose that funding. So,
And that's how it was presented to them.
exactly.
Yeah, so when we first presented at the MSBA, the leader, our team, if you will, their initial thought was just like you said, like, oh yeah, we don't think that we're related. And I said, well, I'm gonna send it to you in writing. If you can get me something back, I said, whatever the answer is, I'm not asking you, you know, to answer it one way or another, but I'd like to have something in writing that I can put in the file.
Yeah.
So I did forward the question to them. We did get it back, a response back, and the latest response is that they've shared the question with senior staff now, and they'll get us an update as soon as they have it. So it was one thing to say it like,
Yeah.
saying, yeah, I think that, but when I asked for it in writing, I think there was a little bit more of a pause
It's
there.
good that you asked for it.
So thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Force them to use the lawyers.
What was that?
Force them to ask the lawyers.
Right.
Exactly. And then the other topic that Mike and Susanna brought to the MSBA was, and I think with a lot of prodding from LBA was the talk about pre-K, right? And what does that mean in terms of reimbursement for us? And I think we were kind of pleasantly surprised. I think that we may have been under the impression that pre-K was not part of the process. But after speaking with the MSBA, and it was in our statement of our SOI, right? They said if we can successfully prove to them through our ed plan that it will be good and beneficial for our town to have pre-K under one roof. Right now it's in 3 different locations. Then they will reimburse, or the classrooms will be part of the reimbursement. So not the shared space, right? So their office space or PTOT or maybe other play space would be excluded, but potentially the 12 classrooms, if we go with that scenario, or the 4 classrooms, if we go with the other scenario, would be included in the reimbursement. So that was huge. Like I thought that was huge.
I think one way to look at that is it's approximately half of the square footage for a central pre-K. That would be eligible for reimbursement. So it's not like half, you know, a third of a half, but you know what I mean. But so that is their precedent. I would assume from the same precedent that if you did end up going with, say, 4 classrooms and prove that you needed those for that school, that would be the same thing. Except in that scenario, we don't have all the other support spaces. We just have the classrooms, so it would be almost all of it. Way to look at it.
It was good news. We need to take our good news when we can, I think, all the time.
It's great.
Tom, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so part of the thing that our team's working on too is just the justification on why having pre-K under one roof, we think is what's best educationally for the community, and also sort of how that aligns to our vision for what education looks like in Reading. So in that program, requirements doc, we're putting together sort of why and also then how we would use potentially the space at the high school. If we were to be able to be, students were to be leaving from those, 5 to 6 pre-K classrooms too. So we expect probably after that submission for us to be able to, kind of speak more, in more detail with the community around like the why of that. Cause I've already had a lot of questions from people sharing like, do we really need pre-K under one roof, or is it worth it for the extra traffic, or is it worth it for the extra potential cost? I think we need to be able to show what we think that would bring for our community. So that's in the works of our team, move this forward.
Maybe just to dovetail on that is that the MSBA has a process, and it's a proven process, and part of that process is that certain people may think this is the better option or this is the better option before you actually do the work. But now that you're doing the work, the results of that work is going to dictate, what is best. You're going to look at it, you're going to understand that whether we're talking about the ed program or whether we're talking about a renovation versus a renovation addition versus new building, the process works. So, just let people know that, they may hear things out there that we're going to do this or we're going to do that, but we're going to follow that process throughout this. And I think as you do it, and as the people in this room are really in depth in that process, they're going to understand it, and they're going to know that you're doing the best thing for your community. It's not, hey, we've got an answer and we're going to work to that answer. You're actually going through the process, and it's going to tell you the right answer at the end.
Pretty scary. I think I'm starting to think like you, because I was gonna say the same thing about the process, and it works, and just have to follow it.
Absolutely.
So, great, thank you. Anything else on that? Okay, thank you. So we'll move along to LBA for designer reports.
Jenny?
Yep, I'm bringing it up.
Oh, okay, that's how we'll do it. So over the you've all seen, so first of all, I do know that our job here tonight is to give you a summary of things we're showing, not necessarily every detail, because I probably could drive you crazy with detail, and that's not why we're here. So I'm learning my committee. The next thing is to say that over the last couple of weeks, you've seen that we looked at a lot of traffic. We looked at traffic right away because we knew that it would dictate a lot of what we would do on site. It's a tight site, and it's very important that we understand it. And we did all of the program stuff and educational stuff, and that way we know what to put in a building. The next thing is to start to put them together. And over the last couple of weeks, we've been looking at, I'll stand up if I can. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been looking at a range of ideas on the site and with the building, trying to mesh them together. Keep in mind that these are really early, but we verify them. We found that if you just put a box on a site, it really doesn't mean anything, because that may not be how the building can work. So we actually design little buildings really fast, in order to make sure. But we look at the renovation, so let's look at, I'll lead you through a thought. Okay. So what we've done thus far is we've put together 4 options. And the 4 options are basically an ad reno, where we look at the idea of taking existing 1-story classroom wing and reutilizing that, and then taking the rest of our program and putting it here. That's one. We will look at the idea of doing the most, say, vertical and compact scheme possible in that area, a 3-story building, which we really wanted to see what it's like. And you can just blur in your eyes, you can see the footprints and how different it is. Then we were challenged by our superintendent to look at a 2-story scheme only, because of the scale and the other schools in town and all of that, which is completely appropriate. So we took that and we looked at a 2-story scheme. Then we looked at a 2-story scheme that kind of wasn't so compact. It stretched out a little bit more like a traditional school, and maybe took out a few classrooms of the old building, and not try to swing space the whole thing, but the idea of finding 6 classrooms and seeing if that was just to give ourselves a little wiggle room and give you our choice. So you see the range, and that's how we're looking at it. We're getting all of these things priced by the square foot, and they may not be radically different in price, but we'll see. And we'll be showing this to community to get some of their feedback. Next.
Does option D
Yep.
have areas of the new school which overlap the existing school? In other words, there would be
Yeah. We're gonna zoom in, but there's one area where we actually go into one of the wings, take it out
okay, so
and say, boom.
there would be that added complication.
Yes, and that we were again asked to look at that in the educational group. I think you felt like there was a possibility that that was something you could overcome, not to create a huge school of swing space. So we give you the whole range. So
Quick question.
Yeah.
For option B, that's a 3-story, C and D, 2 stories?
yes, that is true, but we're going to look at those more in depth. So here's the range.
Yeah.
Next. This is really important. This is where our programming led us in the end. We have, you know, the difference between net square foot and gross. So existing building is 44 and then 60,000 about. That includes the portable classrooms that are permanent, the temporary permanent classrooms. The next, when you see option 1, that's backwards. Okay, I see that. Okay, option 1 is actually the idea of a full pre-K. And, oh, well, it's actually option 2 then.
There's 2 options. They're
Okay, there's a flip flop here. All right, so here's how I'll do it. The smaller option is 102,000 or 3,000 square feet. And that means that there's 4 pre-K classrooms integrated into the school. That's all it means. The larger one, about 20,000 square foot more, means that you've taken the whole rise of 12 classrooms plus big room, admin, testing, all that kind of stuff that RISE needs, and placed it in the building and integrated it. Sorry about the typo, we will look at that, but the rest of it is pretty clear. So this is a crazy drawing, I won't get into it, but this is the kind of thing we did with, after we did our education program, we actually look at every single space. This is almost to scale. The idea of how you come in, where the reception is, where the gymnasium, what connects to the gymnasium, you know, where the art is, where the cafeteria, all the spaces that go to the cafeteria, the lunchroom, da, 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 da. And then we have this diagram up here really is all about the, what we've learned about creating neighborhoods for each grade-based neighborhoods. These guys are grade-based neighborhoods with flex and group rooms and things like that. And then in the center, you'll see very, very purposefully the media center, because the idea of all of these classrooms kind of wrapping a media center, even if it's tall, is really one of your essential ideas for your school. And then when we look at the pre-K or the whole RISE program, you can see that the full RISE program is sizable. I think that was about 24,000 square feet or so. And you can see how that wanted to be set up. So we do this kind of diagram because our floor plans, even though they're more complex, have to match that or work that way. Next. So the first idea, there will be a renovation pricing exercise where we take the exact existing school and have it priced for a full renovation, insulation, the whole bit, so that people know, so the MSBA knows what the baseline is. But again, keep in mind that that building and its pieces are almost about half as big as the program that you actually need. And we've already gone over the 1-story dilemma. This option right here takes the idea of the classrooms, and there's an A1, which says full pre-K. And what that means is that, and we have some diagrams, but we're not going to get into it. It means that this is 1 story right here. It means that when we do an addition right here, there's a whole area of classroom, which is actually needs to be 3-story to even fit on the site. And then there's some other things like gym and stuff that are 2 stories. So this is actually a scheme that ends up being 1, 2, 3, which is how it turned out. And it has, it reuses the existing classroom wing. It is up to 3 stories. It has good edge distance. What I mean by that is part of my own concern is the distance from Haverhill, even though there are setbacks. That doesn't mean it feels right or there's enough distance. And the distance, kind of the apparent distance to neighbors. And it's often nice to have either a buffer or a little bit of distance for scale. Limited queuing space. Remember our traffic? Because this can't go further in, this whole drop off for our traffic, it has much less queuing line getting people off the street and even parking in the afternoon off the street. You've learned all about it. So you can see that. And then it has insufficient play space. That is not much of a field. It's tiny. We have play areas and we kind of did those first, the actual play, but the field is barely a field. It's a green space. Then we have extended phasing. The reason I say extended phasing, it's more complicated. If we want to keep this open, but then at some point we build that, maybe we move the kids into that for a little while, then have to renovate that 1-story building. And that is extended phasing. It's more complicated. We all know that. And that's how it is on site. So you see kind of a sense of that. If I click right now, we're not going to get into this, but I want you to know these are sketches, drawings that are to scale, but they are to prove to ourselves and to you that these are legitimate organizational options. So in this one, where we have option A1, we're actually able to put the entire pre-K into that 1-story building and then use some admin. Get the idea? That's kind of cool, the idea of the new building being everything, but the pre-K being the 1-story building. If you're going to do it, that makes sense. So we did it that way, and then we put the stacked 1, 2, 3, the stacked school spaces on top of each other with the media center in the center. We show stairs, we show gathering, we show service. You know, we really want to make sure that what we're showing you isn't baloney. I like baloney, but you know. So then we go to the next one. And what this one does is it says A2, if you only have the 4 classrooms, here they are, but you can put 1 and K in here, and then everything kind of sweeps over and you come down a level. So it's only actually 2 stories total. And that's how simple it is through a lot of work. So that's the kind of stuff that we have as, in a way, as backup. We sat with the education and committee and went over some of these kinds of options. And I think we got a pretty good sense of what was right for you. Next. The next option. This was the idea of like, how can we do a really efficient 3-story building? And if you look really closely, you see a white line here of the other building. This is quite buildable. It's pretty good on the edges and it's pretty close to the street, but whatever. It has the smallest footprint. It's 3 stories. It has good edges. It has a maximum, a really nice long queuing space to get cars off the street. And we're really kind of dedicated to improving the neighborhood. And it has simplified phasing because while the building is occupied the whole time, that's the most complex it gets. You can build a building, occupy it, tear down the old building, you're done. I make it sound easy, but it's a lot simpler than the alternative. And you can see this field right here, that is 160 by 220, which is a J12, which is what we were asked by the rec department to be able to provide a J12 soccer field. Not bad. So you can see the play space is available without crossing any streets. And it's not bad. And we have the number of parking spaces, 125 or 7 or so, that we really need on the site. Any thoughts or comments when you look at this? So
Not to say, if I understand this correctly too, that it's 3 stories, but depending on whether pre-K is in that model or not. 'Cause
That's right. So this is shown as the A1, the B1 option. So if we click, we see that this is how it lays out. This is very interesting stuff because it's very stacked. The first floor is all the pre-K. So when you come in, you can go to pre-K. And then if you climb the stairs to the second floor, that's where the bigger kids are, kind of like its own world on top. And so we're able to stack that. And then the media center becomes this two-story space in the center. So it's not a bad, I mean, it's a deeper building because it's fat, but we can bring light right into the middle and then out. So it's very, very efficient. And then this is always two-story on the other side. Although in this one, we actually raised the gym up onto another floor, the second floor, in order to put stuff underneath so the gym might actually pop up. So the whole building is mostly three-story. Now let's look at B2, which is what happens when you do your 4 classrooms. In this one, we said, hey, let's just take those 4 classrooms and try to put them over here. They don't need a lot of other stuff. They're off to their side. That way we can do just 2 levels of our 1, 2, 3, K, 1, 2, and then 3, 4, 5, which actually is a good educational separation of, it's kind of like we have these neighborhoods and a town each time. And so this is only 2 stories. The gym probably pops up a little bit, but not a bad building. Even has service.
So the gym would be on the second floor, right?
In this one, we put it on the second floor so that we could do this and
Yeah.
not have this pop up. You can always pull it back and then pop things up, but it's kind of nice to,
It's not usually a good idea to put the gym on the second floor. Vibrational points of view.
we're not, well, since we do this quite often, we're not as concerned because we know how to do the sound difference. We're more, so we know how to do that. Usually I like to put something that's not classrooms underneath it. In the scheme right before it, it was service and things like that, so that's much safer. But we would do a vibration control, so you don't hear boom, boom, boom. But more concerned, even, we can overcome that. More concerned about how do you feel about the kids going up and down to the first floor? You know, just going up 1 level to get to the gym. I will tell you, we had such issues in terms of site size at Swampscott that the gym is actually on the 3rd floor, which I've never done before, but actually it's kind of fun because all the kids go up, they go down, you know, but they don't have pre-K. So that is we can always do a hybrid where we say, hey, we're going to take that gym, get it onto the 1st floor and figure it out. You know what I mean? Between this and another scheme. Because on the next scheme, we actually took everything down a level. It's a good observation, though. If you've ever been in a place where they're bouncing a ball above your head, it's the worst. Next. So then we were challenged to do a full 2-story and put the gym on the 1st floor and all of that. It has the largest footprint. And you can see how tight when I say tight, that's about 40 feet. It's about 50 feet. That's about 40 feet. So it gets closer to the edges, but it's not over any, over lines. But there's and if it's 2-story, that's a very different proximity than 3-story. So it's a little tighter. It still has the wonderful queuing length and it still has the field. We flipped it here, but we have parking here because this all pushes over. We have field. And a thing that I kind of like is all the play space is right adjacent to the building. Like you go right outside and there it is. You've seen that in a lot of schools. It's nice. Still pretty simple phasing. It's pretty tight construction because if I look at this, my white line is right here, which means that I have a whole little slot, you know, it's a solid, you know, 50 feet, but it is pretty tight. If it what?
We have a spot where it's 10 feet.
We have a spot where it's 10. You've done things that are worse, but it's
Touch it.
but it's really part of the formula here of what's right and what's appropriate. If it's the once everything's torn down, if it's the thing you want, that would be the goal because it's going to be there for 75 years. Any thoughts about when you just look at it here? What you're going to find in those diagrams is that this is where we took out the space for the smaller building. So
What
it's
is the
really,
assumption concerning employee parking? I know you had some doubts about whether you had to follow the code or you could get a variance.
right.
Any progress on that or what?
Well, we don't know the answer to what will be asked of us, but we do know what we require for the building. And the 120 is based on the full pre-K, all of the different people who would use the building in the bigger building. So it's around 120. And then we have a few spaces extra for visitors. We also have, obviously, we can talk about event parking and stuff because we're gonna have parking all the way around and things like that. So when we do have our meeting with the town, we will tell them what is reasonable and what functions for the building, and then see where that goes. If they ask for 200, then we're going to have to build a parking deck. Which is,
What does the zoning code require?
211.
200, wow.
yeah, which is far more than is there now.
Yes.
Ours is in line with what is reasonable and practical.
Yeah, it's kind of unreasonable, like why the zoning requires one for every staff member and one for every 7 children. Why would?
Yeah, nobody comes and parks there all day when they have 7 children. So basically what we're trying to do is we're looking at this holistically, and this is the way I would speak to them. Looking at the whole neighborhood, we're looking at parking, we're looking at queuing, we're looking at all this stuff together. And so that this isn't just in isolation. And we all know what it's like to have a big paved area. It's just a heat sink and it's empty. If it's empty all the time, what a waste. So next, so we tested out this building. This is a 2-story building. In order to make that, we have a similar kind of setup here where we have all the pre-K here. And we actually put kindergarten here because there's a place to play. So there's that stack. And then we have the gym and the cafeteria with everything. Right there is this wonderful module, this piece of building, a little community center, right? And that works really well, everything on the first floor. And then you would come in and go up, and there might be like a whole bunch of light coming down here. So there'd be a real feeling of center, a street or something like that. And then you go up, and then we'd have our stacked spaces with our media in the middle, but then these guys off of it, which is 4 and 5. So actually, if the media is here, everybody really feeds into it on that floor. And you can see that it's a, there's thickness to it. But we've all done, I'm trying to use the right words now. There's thickness to it. So what we want to do is bring light in and then take light where these flex areas are. Every time you see a flex area, which is one of those spill out areas, imagine that there's glass high, taking that light and sharing it in through. So it's very transparent and open. And that's how we view it. That's why we're not worried about it. Not bad, right? Next, C2. This doesn't really lower the building in any way. All it really did was we took out a big chunk here, like that, of one, because we had to take out basically 8 classrooms for pre-K, and they want to be in a certain place. Of course, the advantage to this on the site is that when you go like this, it actually creates a wonderful play area. So it's if you go back to, just to really quickly, thank you, Jenny. Go back one more, yeah. So imagine here where it says play area, imagine if this was actually the whole area, that would be a wonderful play area. Even on this street, if there's a fence here, that's where kids play now, and it can be safe and it can be very nice. And it's quite a lot of room. So Tom, does this feel like we listened a little bit?
Good.
Yeah, so this is possible. Next, we'll go to the last scheme. We wanted to challenge ourselves here. We heard that if we possibly, and in this case, how there's these wings like this, they're kind of like that. If we took one of those wings and took it out and impacted it like that, it's about 6 classrooms. Tom said that depending on what year it is and how they can move things around, they can take a couple of the pre-K over here. Maybe they can, there's a bubble year, maybe they can move some kids to another school for 2 years, whatever it is. We took that as a challenge to see if there's a different building available. And look, I think you'll see in the floor plan how that's different. But basically, it has moderately, because you have to tear down some of the building and patch it up, there's a little hiccup at the beginning of the whole thing. But if you're not buying swing space, or if you're not buying a bunch of temporary classrooms, that's what we were trying to avoid. Tearing down, there's almost no reason really to tear down a whole wing and to say we need swing space. It's a waste. I think we all would think it's a waste of money.
So swing space is not reimbursable, so it's all district money whenever you're doing swing space. But understand that we have the modulars that are already where the new building is in any of these options. So there's going to be some discussion on some sort of swing space.
We can buy them.
Minimizing that is, I think.
By the way, during construction, we feel like you could probably take those 2 kindergarten modules and pick them up and move them into that courtyard on the side, in the middle of that courtyard on the side, or even on the side, on the north side of the site. Something to think about, because you really need to keep them moving, up and running. So that's what this one is. So why is this one different? This one's different because it's less of a compact, deep building, and it's more like a building where I walk in, I have my wing of stuff, and I have play areas like this. And then I go in and here's some wings like this with a kindergarten kind of all there. And this is almost identical, only flipped, right? At this point. But then on the second floor, it's very interesting. The diagram to me is the idea that you have a couple of grades and a couple of grades, all with their stuff, the media kind of in the middle, and a grade here that feeds this way. So it kind of works out. Now you have a few more spaces that get daylight, and the media center is not in the center, has a window, and it's kind of stacked that way. So that is a more spread out building, kind of a thing you've seen before. I think that there are things that are problematic with it. The idea of ever having to pass through one to get to another. We don't like that idea. We'd have to solve that because we don't want to have kids walking through another neighborhood if possible. Whenever you see these schools with this long corridor, people are disrupting each other all the time, and it would be really nice to have neighborhoods that were a whole. So that was D1. Then the next one, the only difference is we actually cut off a little bit here. I know this sounds funny, Mike, but you could actually just take off a couple classrooms if it was possible and try to build it. So that's the funny one thing about that is by pulling back this wing. And we haven't figured it all out, but it's a 2-story building and it's a little more spread out. So is that the very last thing? I just wanted to show all of them. Okay, so if you had any comments, please let me know. But that's our range right now that we're having priced. And we're looking at, none of them seemed wrong, right? They all kind of feel like they're appropriate. Is there something we missed?
Getting back to parking.
Yeah.
Is there a way of finessing this by having the exit or having a part of the drive-through clearance go through the employees' parking lot if you think don't really need all those spaces for the employees?
In this case, we need all the spaces. The way that we've drawn it, we need all the spaces for the
Okay,
employees.
so this is not full 200.
This is 100 and
Okay.
the 120 is for all of the staff, all of the teachers
So this
for the
is
larger school.
This is if you get a variance.
This is exactly what would work for you every day.
Yeah, I think we said that there's 80 in the longest queue. There's room for an additional 80 cars to park parallel along the loop road.
For parents.
So you're getting close to
So
that
you're
200,
200
right?
and
You're getting close to that 200.
It's a way to talk about it.
the maximum.
A way to talk about it is that when they say 200, they're also thinking about events.
40 spots on the
Yeah.
street.
And we're trying to be clever about it. People keep bringing up should be done. People keep bringing up the church and other parking areas. You really have to look into that. It doesn't always work out the way you'd like. Somebody would have to ask it.
That's how the swamp's gone.
Yeah.
I didn't say it. All I'm saying is it doesn't always work. You think that we're all charitable in this world, but not everyone's as charitable as others. Anyway, this represents what we think is the exterior and interior program that's required for this elementary school. The only one I don't think that meets it is the first scheme where we have insufficient queuing, weird parking, and insufficient play space for the children on the site. That first renovation addition option, which we will follow through and do, but it does not do well on the site.
And we're gonna have one more option you mentioned at the very beginning, which is just the straight up renovation only. And what's gonna happen with that one is we're gonna be able to show a renovation option. But we're gonna basically, the result of that is that the enrollment isn't going to be that. So that existing building renovated to the proper size and everything for that, we'll say the enrollment is X, which is gonna be 60% of what we need. And that's probably gonna disqualify it, I would say, I don't want to speak
It's
to it,
40,
but it does have to be shown.
it's 40 or 60,000 square feet too small, which is a huge amount of space that needs to be.
And the only other comment I would have is just on any of these, from the hardship on anybody, the hardest part of any of these is actually gonna be after the building is done and before the old building comes down or as the old building's coming down. Because what we're looking at here is you're looking at, oh, look at the parking and everything.
Yeah.
Well, picture it with the other building there right now, like,
There's
so.
a building
The
right
day we're
here.
opening, we have the other building still there and we're demolishing it. So we're gonna have a time period, a reasonably substantial time period, where we might have to do off-site parking or something like, because we're working on this site, that time that it takes to take down that old building and rebuild all those fields and that parking, we can look at phasing and logistics, but there's only so much you can do to get around that old building.
To put it really even, to take what you just said, to approach the church and say, hey, for 2 years, can we pay you some money to have our teachers park in your lot during the daytime? That would be so huge because it would allow you to have some space on site, kids to go outside.
I think that
Smart.
might be welcome.
Yeah.
Proposal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I go back to something you said earlier? Just want to be clear, at the beginning of this presentation showed the 3 options: current square footage, partial pre-K. Yes, that slide. So what I heard you say is that all of these solutions are going to cost the same? But did we mean?
What I mean
option one or
is,
Option 2.
what I mean is that, and I know that this should be option 2, but this one, that's 102,000 or 103,000 square feet, which is the smaller enrollment option. There's that, and then there's the larger enrollment option. Obviously, those cost differently by square foot.
Okay.
All of our buildings that are new, in the end, need to pretty much be about that gross square footage. That's what we're allowed to do. Some of them, when our estimator looks at it, might say, at this level, it's hard to go past square footage, but it might say, this requires a lot much tighter, I'm gonna put in some allowance because this is tighter construction, or this has much more jigs and jogs, or this one does this. And they might say this one might right now be a little more than the others. I don't think that though, once you see this versus this versus this, other than when you impact the other building, and there's a allowance for that, they may not be radically different in square footage costs. You know what I mean? 3 versus 2. If I were gonna guess, I'd say that this would be the least expensive because it's 3 stories and it all lines up and all of that. But is it the best because it's 3 stories and do we go to that? And that's where you say, okay, this one costs a couple $100,000 more, but it's 3 stories versus 2 stories, which better?
So we're gonna estimate each of the 4 Connection with home and options.
That's what I was trying to be clear about, yes. Okay.
8 schemes,
So
actually
like
9.
So
actually
120,000
9
square
schemes.
feet costs more than 100,000 square feet. I just wanted to be clear about that.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, yeah, okay. Just wanted
Oh,
to
I
be
thought
clear.
that was, sorry.
Nope, that's okay. You just made that one statement, so I just wanted to clarify that and.
Jenny always has to Jenny should answer anything that has to do with numbers.
I should probably just answer all.
So Jenny, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Just going back to the gross versus net square footage, can you talk just a little bit about those two numbers? What
Yeah.
what's considered net square footage and gross square footage and what the differential is there?
Okay, so if I look at the one with,
That's a numbers
Lee.
oh, that's you doing it.
I specifically asked.
I'm sorry, I wasn't up to it.
We used a 1.5 multiplier because we don't really, haven't gotten to the level of detail where we can
Okay.
measure the gross. So included in the gross is the thickness of the walls, the corridors, bathrooms, mechanical spaces, telecom rooms.
That is really the program space.
And that is
So
the
you
program
know,
space.
net is pure program space. The gross includes not only thickness of walls and stuff, but common spaces. Mechanical.
If I may, Swampscott used a 1.5. It was a pretty straightforward for the MSBA to accept that.
1.5 is typically what we see. I've seen it as high as 1.55, I think, and as low as 1.45, but 1.5 is usually, that.
Just looking at the schemes that you put up there
Right.
instinctively, I would think that the ratio would go down on some of those. Like the ratio might go down on the 3-story.
When you start to have a wing that goes trailing off, everything adds up in the court and you're paying for corridor or for length of walking that you don't otherwise. They all have elevator and stairs anyway. So, yes, I think you're right.
These are stairs, not ramps, right? They're internal stairs, not ramps.
Right. Ramps are kind of crazy, right? I went to a place recently where they said, can't we just it was like a half level. Can't we just put a ramp here? And I said, okay, that's just 6 feet. That's times 12. I mean, it was just 100 feet long. Like people don't know that ramps just go on forever.
Elevator, each building would have an elevator.
Yeah.
For the net. Go ahead. For the net space, is the classrooms obviously are part of the net space, but is that like the cafeteria, the gyms, are those the entire portion?
Everything that's in the MSBA program that we showed you.
Yep.
That chart is net because it's quantifiable. And then they bring it all the way down to the net, which is all of the usable program space, including, all the spaces, even a sped room, all those things. Then they do a line item, and then we do the 1.5 right now to bring it up to the gross, and it's usually about right.
Yeah, so that net space is not only classrooms, it is the cafeteria, it is
Oh,
the
yeah.
gym,
Gym and all
it is
that
the
stuff.
admin areas, it is offices, a lot of it is actually in that net space. So pretty much everything you see up there is net.
Yeah.
It's
That's net.
It's all, the bathrooms are not net, if there's additional storage space, like if you have gym storage might be in the gym, but just general storage rooms would be in the net, in the gross.
They don't let us use, for net, they don't let us say vestibule and lobby. That's kind of extra, so there's quite a lot in there.
And those fill up hallways, which we're trying to make net space is technically gross space.
A little of each. We have
The flex space.
the flex space, we actually programmed it as best we could. And then you would have walkways because you need to get to the classrooms and the fire code requires that anyway. And that becomes the gross.
Better hallways and more open areas because you.
The more efficient we can be, the better.
I remember it was early on with GNAP, one of the studies of our buildings, they are like all of our elementary school buildings are like smaller compared to normally what like buildings would be now if you were to kind of go through the MSBA process.
Right.
I was wondering, what is that square footage for a school of this size? Is that sort of the kind of in the range that's typical, or is this would this be a bigger school than maybe what, you know, a typical build is for a K-5 school of around this size.
Well, certainly the pre-K makes a course.
Yeah.
Where you have more square footage is, and everybody has more square footage than they used to, is in special education mostly. A little bit in the flex and breakout rooms
Yeah.
and small group rooms. But it's, even that's considered special education most of the time. You might have, in your old building, you might have 1,000 square foot of special education, and here you might have 8, because you just never had it before. I don't think it's that, it's not wildly off for MSBA.
Okay.
At all. You might do a slightly different program if the MSBA wasn't here telling you, you know, you did go through this whole process.
What are the prime factors that you see which would dictate a decision between those 4 schemes? I mean, it's obviously not cost.
Yeah.
Is it
Well,
educational convenience,
I think it has to do with,
access?
I think the site has tons to do with it. Really worried, not just about when you do phasing, not just worried about like cost, but disruption. That would disruption for your programs because the kids are there and safety. So that's a thing. I think that it has to do with quality of the building. So go back one. We did one scheme once where we took this and actually had that wing right here, like this, and it stuck out the other way. So this wing was right there on the street. And I was wholly against it because if you go, this is suburbia. If you go on that street, there's no walls. This isn't Main Street. There's no walls. So if we can get anything to jog and come in and out a little bit, it'll make a huge difference. We can make that happen. But I would say that 3 stories versus 2 stories is a huge deal. It doesn't have to be a huge deal. I'm not afraid of 3 stories, but if it's philosophically something, when you build a building, 2 stories, I can create open 2-story spaces and stairs that are open. The second I go to 3 stories, I have to put them all in fire stairs everywhere. From 2 to 3 stories is a big deal when it comes to the building code. So that I do know.
When you're trying to bring light, in a thick building, like you're saying, you're trying to bring
Absolutely.
light down from the roof to a skylight. You go to 3 stories. and
Well, I
you're-
would put glass around it, the top floor.
Yep.
Not have it open anyway and bring the light down. I have to block things off a little bit, but it's just a different thing. When you were at that school and you looked up and saw the 2 levels, this might be a little different, but you can still, the difference between connecting 2 levels and connecting 3 levels for little kids is a big deal. So I understand why you said that. And I believe, once again, looking at your town, there's not a lot, this is not a 3-story town, there's a 2-story town. When I look around, even that building, that the brick building that's right here, the hospice, it's a brick face.
Yeah.
It's 3 stories. But it is, it's a house 3 stories, which is probably like 9, 9, and 9. And we're gonna be 14, 14, 14. It's a very different world. So those are the kind of things that I worry about when trying to create a building that fits.
What does option D do? Option D to me doesn't seem to have any merits whatsoever.
Option D,
Tell me what you really think.
Throwing out a.
Option D.
Don't sugarcoat
What
it.
does option D do?
option D has more spaces with window.
Oh, with women.
It doesn't have as many deep spaces because it's longer and skinnier. It's a little more traditional that way.
I actually like D probably better than the other
You do?
options. Yeah, for the long term. Short term, it might be more difficult to build, but long term.
Well, that's why we draw it. That's why we draw it. I actually don't have an opinion other than it has its attributes. And whichever one works best for you is the one we want to build. So here, and what we're going to do next, we will do little 3-dimensional, like little things of it, but that'll go over time. We're going to show something like this to the community. Is there anything on here that you feel like the community, that might be too much for the community to absorb right now. Should we show those floor plans or should we back off and just show the sites? You tell me what you think. I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm just trying not to overwhelm anyone.
Be for on Thursday?
Yeah.
Would that be as soon as Thursday?
The community would be interested in what the building looks like, buildings options from the outside. I don't think they're interested in what goes on the inside. I mean, certain people who have kids in the school are obviously, but most of the community doesn't care.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with that. We may have the floor plans in the back on that section where we show the sites. We'll show like one of the main site plans. And we're actually going to talk a little bit about educational planning beforehand anyway. So we just won't, they've already seen the traffic stuff, so they can start to bring it together. It'll be more focused on site and building. Okay.
So, can we make a note, Mike, maybe this is you, great idea about maybe approaching the church regarding parking and Simon's Way. The ice skating rink parking lot is not terribly busy during school hours. Like, I would just make a note that that could be and also a potential offsite, same kind of scenario.
Temporary and
Yeah.
really help you during that time. Jenny is in charge.
Yeah, just want to wrap this up with our next steps. So we'll be cost estimating these 9 options, starting next week for 2 weeks. We will have, do you want to talk, Carla, about the next SBC meeting? Is now a good time to do that? Yeah, my slide says 6.
So our next meeting is May 6th, and that will be the 4th night of town meeting, because we had a change in town meeting times. So, we can't have our meeting then. We have a meeting. So we originally scheduled a meeting for May 6th, which was a Monday. We scheduled a meeting for May 9th. And the purpose for that, and Jenny, correct me if I'm wrong, was that they were gonna present the PDP to the committee and then have us vote on it on the 9th.
Yeah, so we're planning to do preliminary, present the PDP and the cost estimates on the 6th and have a vote on the 9th. So we would just do both of those, the cost estimates, the PDP draft, and vote
On the 9th.
on the 9th.
On the
We can
9th.
probably still get it to them a little bit earlier.
Yes.
So,
Oh, we want, our goal is to get you a draft of these things
On the
a few
2nd.
days beforehand so that you can look over them. We never really get into the PDP submission. It's a book like this fat. We do a summary for you. And that's usually appropriate, right?
And what you get isn't gonna be the 100% final draft either. There's gonna be the ed program, the estimates, those are gonna be pretty much done. But there's a lot of other parts and pieces in there that we're gonna continue to work on and tweak and refine.
So you could actually
Over the
vote,
next 10 days.
hey, we're okay with you submitting this in a week and a half. If you refine this, do this and do this, you can always do it that way. This is a long process. As I was saying before the meeting, we give this to the MSBA and we're gonna get a month and a half of comments back and forth while we're still moving forward. It just keeps on rolling. So we want you to know that, well, Mike is your manager.
No, but you're absolutely right. There's gonna be questions that come back and say, address this in the next submission. There might be questions that come back and we just say we're going to address it in the next submission. There's gonna be, Desi is gonna potentially have some commenting on special ed, things like that, and it's just part of the process. So don't worry if we get it and we have questions, like, you're never gonna get it and not have questions.
So basically what we're thinking of is canceling the May 6th meeting. May 9th will be the vote. We will get, the information will be sent to the committee on May 2nd. So we will have a week to review the cost estimates, the draft or the high level of the PDP submission and all that kind of stuff. And then it will be on the 9th, we'll be able to have our answers, the questions answered, we'll vote on it on the 9th, and then LBA has 2 weeks, basically, or a week and a half to put it fully together and submit it to the MSBA.
Carl, we have a school committee meeting tonight, I think.
Yes, our meeting is at 6 and school committee is 7. And you're right, that was a short meeting we had scheduled for the 9th.
Correct.
Doesn't sound like it's gonna be such a short meeting.
No, it doesn't.
So we can always move school committee back maybe to like 7:30 if we have to, or.
So, I mean, if we're focusing this meeting primarily just on the submission, right?
Submission cost, for the first time you guys say cost, so it's gonna be a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
And
So how much time do you think they'll need? We could, we could potentially put it to 5:30 to 7:30 and then push the school committee to 7:30. It's 2 hours, okay?
Sure, no problem.
Yeah.
Do we want a school committee at the high school?
Yeah, maybe we could do it at the high school.
So we haven't scheduled a meeting with the select board yet. I'm getting very concerned about costs and not having the select board fully engaged. So Matt has, our chair put that on a date, or how are we doing on that?
Yeah, it's definitely not on for tomorrow night.
Yep.
We had talked about possibly the 7th or the 21st, which is your next 2 meetings after that.
In other words,
So we don't meet again until May 7th.
You don't meet, yeah,
Okay,
because of
because
town
of town
meeting,
meeting,
you don't
right,
meet till
right,
May
right.
7th.
So why don't we just invite the select board to this meeting? And they can,
So which meeting, the 9th?
so the 9th.
I mean, we've invited the select board to come before, and I've been asking for a presentation to the select board.
Right.
So I do not want to leave this. This isn't optional at this point, and that's why it's really important. We have,
do you
in
think,
my
it-
opinion, we haven't been reaching out enough.
right, do you think it's possible now? I was ready to meet with them anytime,
Here.
you know that, but, no, it's actually true. But what I would say is this. Inviting them to this meeting is fine, but I still think that that shouldn't be when they can engage. Maybe a week later after the PDP, we should meet with you first to go over the numbers and the submission and all that. And then maybe the next week meet with, or the week after that.
So we're saying the 7th? I'm not sure if the timing works out, if the PDP.
No, not the
is-
7th, we shouldn't meet with them before we meet with you.
That's what I mean. The PDP is going in on the 20th. We don't meet again, I think, until the 21st, so the next day.
Matt, what are the upcoming select board meetings?
The 7th and the 21st
So the
21st.
first of May.
of May,
21st is fine.
but it's after the PDP submission.
Doesn't matter, they're not gonna, listen, it's not the select, I'm gonna say this publicly, it's not the select board's choice or job to say that's not the right cost estimate.
The reason I'm
Go ahead.
bringing this up is that this is not the only building project that we have going on.
Sure.
And I was gonna bring it up, this was the liaison report. This community needs to be aware that there is a 25,000 square foot senior active living center being planned to be brought to town meeting the same time that we will be bringing this to town meeting, potentially being on the same ballot. That is why I'm saying, and I won't be the only one, that I'm thinking you gotta take it up a level. When you come to the select board, I'm like, you're right, they're not gonna do a deep dive in what we've been doing, but we gotta take it up a level from a townwide planning perspective. All right, so that's my concern.
But that's not the responsibility of this committee, the select board,
So I've been asking,
rest of the
so
town.
the school committee got a presentation a number of weeks ago, so I've just been asking for it, it hasn't been scheduled yet. I'm getting concerned now that we are costs, as soon as you put costs in public, and we've seen this from last week, first cost data came out on the senior centers, a lot of questions, you're gonna get more questions, so it's just a priority, and I'm sure we'll figure out a solution, but it's really important that I operate in a silo, and those are some of the comments that we have residents.
Because this is about if it's really about cost, I want to ask Mike, who is much more, if they start asking about costs, Mike is going to be speaking. And
Well-
what is your opinion about all?
So if we were to meet on the 7th, we would not be talking about cost
Understood.
because the cost hasn't been brought to the committee until the 9th.
Yep.
So even though we would have the cost internally, we would have shared that with everybody here. I don't think it would be appropriate to talk about costs on the 7th prior to meeting with this, because we haven't made any decisions. Again, it's a,
Yeah.
so we're happy to make a presentation, but just understand that it's a presentation. We can ask questions, but there's no actions being taken. But
It sounds like the May 21st
Yeah.
select board
Yeah,
meeting
maybe
is
that's
actually
like perfect.
lining up perfectly.
yeah, I think we could say we just have a package submitted.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it would be,
Yep.
the soonest we could get to the select board anyway, probably based on their agenda. Because they're probably pretty full for May 7th anyway.
You'd have a full board by then, this will be after the election.
Yeah.
What kind of length of presentation would that be for the select board?
Well, it's funny, every time I come, I have a different idea about what we want to talk about. Earlier,
Yeah,
we definitely want to engage the select board in the discussions we've had about if we don't get MBTA communities in place, what does that potentially mean? That might be one topic. The timing, because this committee is also concerned in a big way with that this gets voter approval. So that kind of conversation, and then
Cost.
yeah, timeline, costs and MBTA communities off the top of my head, in addition to like letting, having them very much focus, and I agree, like submitting something to the MSBA is it's a good time, because it's kind of, you're putting pen to the paper, it's something really solid, and that's kind of what we saw last week for the first time, so I'm just a little panicked it hasn't been scheduled yet.
So the way I see this committee is responsible for this project, right? And moving forward, we have two major boards. We have the select board, we have the school committee. This group here is doing these presentations, right? We're inviting those boards to do these presentations. Moving forward, I see it as a waste of resources.
So let me be clear, it's
excuse me
not
for
a
a
waste of
second.
resources for us to come to the
Excuse me
school
for a second.
committee, but it is a waste of resources to come to the select board.
So I will tell you what happened with that. When we went to the school committee initially, it happened in a way that it was scheduled, and after looking back on it, I said, LBA and Colliers presented the same presentation that we did here to the school committee. And I said, that was a waste for me. Per hour for these guys, for 4 of these guys, it's costing us $1,000. It's just a waste to do the same presentations. If it's a new presentation, it should be coming to this committee first. That's how I view it. We're the governing body and the deciding body. We want to invite people into these meetings to have these types of conversations, because we can have those conversations here. To go to the school committee and have those conversations, and to go to the select board and have those conversations is fine, but this is the governing board that needs to hear it. That's how I look at it. And we're happy to host school committee, and we're happy to host the select board. Quite frankly, we've been having community meetings, and we've invited school committee, select board, FinCom.
I've met some people.
Absolutely. We've never had to call a quorum. Never. We haven't even had to call a quorum for this group. So let's just keep that all in mind. It's our responsibility as a community to know and understand where we're at with each project. But I do agree with you, Karen, that there has to be, on the town level, there has to be a coordinated effort with the senior center. Because now, we're hearing all this stuff about the senior center coming in right before Killam. That's concerning. Because this is the big ticket item.
Senior center is a big ticket item as well.
Right.
27 million is not.
Right. It's not as big of a ticket item,
No,
but in
it's-
terms of tax implications, it's a big ticket item. And you have CPA on top of that,
Much more than I thought it would be.
right? So that is a coordination effort that has to be done on the town level, in my opinion.
Hey, Carla?
Yeah.
Sorry, just I'm actually going back a little bit. I didn't want to interrupt you guys. We're in the middle of the flow, but maybe just a question for Matt. When we were talking about the dates, do we know how likely that we're not going to meet on the fourth day of town meeting? I'm just recalling the agenda and the warrant articles that are out there. You know,
Yeah.
this very well could be wrapped up before that. I don't think it, after hearing the rest of the discussion, it may not, all that impactful, but is it something where we want to keep that open still on that Monday in case we don't have town meeting? That's my only point.
Yeah, we just don't know for sure. I would say 2 nights, probably 3 nights, possible 4 nights, but it's not a very long warrant. But we are dealing with like the town budget, we had tried to keep this town meeting a little lighter because we thought MBTA communities may come on this agenda, on this warrant, but that's gonna be probably November now. So I can't say 100%. I mean, I'm hopeful that we can wrap it up in 3 nights.
So from a process perspective, are we precluded from having a placeholder on the same night of town meeting? Or like when can that, and maybe it doesn't matter. I'm just, I hate to miss a date if we don't have to miss a date.
Right.
And Ed, we came up with a good workaround to still have the vote on May 9th. We're just not gonna meet on the 6th, but the committee will receive the whole proposal on the 2nd, and we'll have a week to process it. So I think we're actually in okay shape if we don't have that, our meeting on the 4th night of town meeting.
So in the interim, is there a process that we're gonna go through for as the committee reviews it and has questions, so that when we meet on the 9th, like some of that stuff gets funneled in ahead of time so we can make ourselves a little bit more efficient for the 9th, considering that was gonna be just a review?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So if we get the packet on the 2nd and then potentially ask for questions to be submitted some more before.
No, we'll actually get it. Sleep, right?
So
We
we-
do internally, so we will be, I think, ready to share that estimate.
May 2nd, May 3rd.
Do you feel like you need, is it better for this process for us to submit questions early, or do you think it's okay to do it on that?
So I think let's just say, for the sake of discussion, if we commit to having the package by the 3rd, hopefully it'll be the 2nd, but 2nd or the 3rd, if people had questions that they shared to one person, because we don't want to have an outside discussion, like outside of the meeting, but if they all funneled to you, Carla, and you sent them to us, a couple of days in advance, we're going to be presenting, and what we can try and do is in our presentation, answer some of those questions.
Okay.
And if we can't answer them in the presentation, we'll make sure we have the answers anyway.
Okay.
But any questions we get ahead of time is only going to help us with the process.
Okay, so if we get the submission on May 3rd, which is a Friday, if we ask people if they have questions to submit, we'll submit them to Jackie. She'll send them to Colliers and LBA by the 7th.
Yeah.
And then they'll try and incorporate it into their presentation on the 9th, but we still can ask questions
Absolutely.
on the 9th, verbal questions.
And Ed, this PDP is a agenda set by, a list set by the MSBA. We answer all the questions, we put it all in. You will have seen most of it already before, except for numbers that are square foot, that are conservative square foot numbers. They're not how, you know what I mean? And right, Mike? I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
I think the only other thing we might do, one of the things I've been trying to do on my projects lately is not only have the numbers, but try to get them into an early version of the 3011, so we can kind of see how the town share kind of works out.
Go for it.
That way that we have a general idea of that, because for example, the renovation or the renovation addition, you get the bonus points because of the renovation compared to a new. So there is some differences there, but I think we've already all talked a little bit about the challenges with those, but understanding those cost ramifications.
Matt and Carla and Jackie, just a request for the 9th to, can we have that as a virtual option as well? Cause I won't be in Reading.
We definitely will.
Should.
Oh, and that will be at the high school.
Perfect. Yep.
Yeah, we'll have that at,
Thank you. Sorry.
no problem. Okay. You good? Designers, you guys good? We're good. Thank you. Susanna? Update?
Can I share my screen?
Jenny, think you got a copy of that presentation too for the back end? That's great.
So here you see our monthly update for our budget. And
The good news here is we haven't really had a lot of changes since the last time, so there's no new budget adjustments, so you can see everything's grayed out there. So that's all things that we previously reviewed. Similarly on the commitments, everything is grayed out, so there's been no new commitments, no new change orders or contracts since the last time we talked. And I think we just have a couple of invoices that have come through there. Just so you understand there, when you look at that, for example, you see LBA in there, there's 4 entries. It's actually one invoice, but it's broken apart into different cost codes and different services. So that's why it's just identified that way. So you'll kind of see that throughout the project as we go forward. It doesn't, you have the invoice number there. 820 is the same on all of them, but it's just breaking it out to parts and pieces. And then this is our cash flow projections, kind of seeing where we are, actual versus estimated versus cumulative. And we're actually trending a little bit below where we were expecting, and you'll see that in the graph there as well. So the general shape is correct. We're just spending a little bit less, and a lot of that has to do with our fee is a not to exceed number, and I think we're slightly under on the hourly. So just being judicious with the billing.
Not wrong being under budget. Not wrong at not spending all the money.
Got a contract to say that.
Because I'm talking about the designers.
I was gonna say because.
John, it's recorded for us. Put them on record. And we don't need it.
No, this is just informational. Really, I think the invoices, all the invoices you saw there are all within budget. They're all within the commitments and all being processed in that, with that understanding.
Any questions? Okay, moving along. School tours. We have one scheduled so far
Yes.
for May 1st.
That's correct. So we're gonna be meeting with Acton Boxborough on May 1st, and I think we said 1:30. So we'll send out like a calendar invite to everybody just so they have it. But we're trying to confirm with Watertown right now. We got a confirmation from them that they're happy to have us. We're just trying to get the dates nailed down, basically. So
So it'll be in May though.
yes, that's what we're looking for, and at least after the vacation week is what we're targeting. We've also had I've had some discussion with Joe. I think he might try and do the facilities part, maybe a little bit separate from our meeting, figuring that he can be more focused on the things that would be important to him, and that he can maybe use a little less of their facilities people's time by doing a more focused meeting on that. So I think that that's what we're gonna do with that. But other than that, we're gonna have this group here, and again, I think we talked before about inviting some of the other educators and teachers and select whoever wants to join us.
Any of these 3 schools, do they implement geothermal?
I bet you Acton does.
I was gonna say, I don't know for certain on Acton Boxborough. I know neither Watertown project. They both are net zero buildings. They both have solar panels. And, I believe it's all air source stuff on both projects.
Stoneham High is using geothermal part of their project. I haven't been to their site yet. I don't know how tight it is, so I'm curious.
And Swampscott, we talked
It's a
about
pretty
maybe
tight
at some
site.
point doing a little look at Swampscott. That one is using geothermal for ventilation and ventilation, but not heating. Is that
So
right?
like a hybrid solution. Those are options. Okay.
It's hybrid, but,
Yeah.
but it's still, it's for heating and for cooling.
Well, for heating and cooling and not ventilation. Ventilation is air source. I had it backwards.
No, that's what I was wondering about as well. Like, good, awesome, good
It
stuff.
is geo.
Acton? Oh, okay, cool.
The, those two schools, the Watertown schools and the, Acton Boxborough schools, what other, like architectural elements? What's unique about those schools that would pertain, or either on a 3-story building?
Hosmer is, Hosmer
Okay.
and Watertown is.
So we'll
So
go-
in Hosmer has the pre-K kind of aspects to it.
Okay,
And kind of the other one is more in line with our enrollment. So it's kind of is more in line with the enrollment we're projecting. Hosmer is maybe more in line, including the pre-K, if we were doing the larger pre-K. So I think kind of seeing the difference between those two schools
excellent, yeah.
will actually help out a little bit. And they, the way they've actually kind of built that school, it's a little bit of an unusual shaped school to kind of fit with the site.
Yeah, perfect. Excellent.
I would also say the Acton Boxborough School, it is 3 stories, and their like media center is similar to the concept we're trying to create.
I think both of the water towns are 3 stories, actually.
Okay,
Even though kind of being a little bit smaller, I think it's, I'm pretty positive it's 3 stories.
yeah, that makes sense.
It might,
They
maybe
have
it's,
the early childhood center too.
Great, sound like good fits.
actually,
Learn a lot.
I think kind of 2, Hosmer's 3.
Watertown type sites.
Yeah, well, actually, one of the things that's interesting on kind of, so Hosmer, they tore down part of the original building to build the new building, and then they had to tear down the rest. Kind of, they actually found a parochial school in the next town over that was closed, and they actually moved all the kids there and tore down the old building because the site just wasn't big enough to do two buildings on one site. When we get out there, you'll see you got a reasonably small parking lot and a building, and you're pretty much taking up most of the site.
Thank you. So you'll send out an invite to
Yes.
everybody for the first, and then we'll hear about the other 2.
Yeah, and we'll send it out to like everybody here and on TV, but if you need to forward it to colleagues or something like that, feel free to.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move to approve the March 25th meeting minutes.
So I had one edit down in our vote at the end on the meeting minutes. We lost Sarah, and I was like, I thought we made an error, but I remember in the chat, she said goodbye a little bit earlier. I don't know if anybody remembers what time it was, but maybe just like Sarah left the meeting before that final vote, so it doesn't look like we screwed up with the vote.
It's actually in the meeting minutes that she.
Is it? Oh, I missed it.
Meeting 81.
Thank you.
Good meeting.
Right, yeah, she's good.
Perfect. Good job, Jackie. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the 3:25 meeting minutes?
So moved.
And we'll take a vote. Karen,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes,
Greg,
Abstain, I was not present for the meeting.
Pat,
Yes,
Nancy,
Yes.
and I'll abstain because I wasn't at the meeting either. So we passed. Thank you, everybody. And future agenda items and next meeting dates, we spoke about that. We have our community meeting on Thursday at 7 o'clock at Killam. Anybody else have any other proposed future agenda items?
I'm just gonna add on that Mike and Joe Huggins and a couple of our staff members are leading a tour at 6:30, starting before 6:30 to 6:50, for anyone who hasn't seen the building before. It's gonna be just kind of a high level overview of just some of the, the issues that we've described, and then just kind of walk through the space too. So tours open at 6:30.
I'll entertain a motion. Adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Take a vote. Karen,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Carla, yes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Great job, my presentation. That was good stuff.
Thanks.
Yeah, it
There's
was
a lot of machination